Throughout the month of March, I released a 3-part series where I took an in-depth dive into each individual Chinese wooden coaster in an effort to put the information that is known about these obscure coasters into a somewhat comprehensive guide. We went through a total of 17 coasters and 14 unique layouts as I presented all the information that I could possibly find for each one. Today, all 3 of those parts and 13 of the 14 layouts are about to come full circle as I make my prediction ranking for all of you. The guide series was purely factual, and I tried to mostly keep my opinions out because I myself haven't ridden the coasters, so I shouldn't give personal opinions in a guide. But today I'm here to make a completely separate video where I take what other people said about the ride and combine it with everything I know about each coaster and make my predicted Chinese wooden coaster ranking. And let me remind you that this is just a prediction. If I had ridden all these coasters, I'm sure the ranking would look at least a little bit different. So just try to keep that in mind because the point of this video isn't to create a quote-unquote correct list. This is just a fun video to wrap up the series. Before we get into the top 10, there were 3 coasters that failed to make the list. All good rides though, so I'll give a brief ranking. At number 13, we have Great Desert Rally, the GCI at Happy Valley Chengdu. There's some nice fast-paced elements at the end, but the first half is kind of meandering and the airtime I've heard is extremely weak. At 12, we have Darling Dragon. Darling Dragon is very fast-paced and of course has the incredible high five element, however it pretty much never races and the forces are also said to be somewhat weak. And the last honorable mention is Wooden Coaster Fireball. Now I really wanted to include this one on the list considering it has about the same number of airtime moments as Steel Vengeance, but there isn't a whole ton other than airtime and there have been mixed reports on the strength of airtime. Now with those 3 done, let's get into the actual list. Kicking it off at number 10 is a set of cloned Gravity Group coasters, Fjord Flying Dragon at Happy Valley Tianjin, which opened in 2013, and Jungle Trailblazer at Fantasyland Dreamland Zhujiao, which opened in 2016. The pacing on these rides are absolutely incredible. It goes from element to element to element, with almost no time in between. When I was researching this coaster, there was not a single review that did not mention just how insane the pacing is and how it adds to the experience. They're both also extremely long rides, nearly 4,000 feet of track. Now that might not sound crazy because everyone knows about the stats like the 8,000 feet that Steel Dragon has, but this coaster is a little more than half the speed, so in ride length they're actually probably about the same, aka some of the longest rides in the world. The laterals on these things also look abnormally sharp for a gravity group, and actually kind of remind me of the type of laterals you'd find on a coaster like Wild One. My only concern really about these rides is I'm not really sure how well the PTC trains would traverse a layout of this sort. PTCs are built for a bit more drawn out layouts, but I'll just have to get out to China sometime to try for myself to judge. Moving up to number 9 is another set of clones, 2 more Jungle Trailblazers, Jungle Trailblazer Oriental Heritage Ningbo, which opened in 2016, and Jungle Trailblazer Oriental Heritage Jinan, which opened in 2015. Now I want to say right off the bat that there is this misconception that there's only 2 Jungle Trailblazer layouts, one with an inversion and one without. That's simply not the case. There are actually 5 completely different layouts, 2 which have an inversion and 3 of which don't. But some of these layouts are cloned and some aren't, which makes it all really confusing. But I'm going to try and make this as simple as possible. Jungle Trailblazer, Oriental Heritage Ningbo, and Jinan are a set of clones that are some of the ones that do feature an inversion. From what I've heard, the corkscrew doesn't do a whole lot, no forces of any kind. It's just kind of a cool element to have on a wooden coaster. As for the forces that the ride does have, there's a load of airtime hills. Like you mean that after the corkscrew, airtime is pretty much the only element there is, aside from 2 pretty intense bank turns. The airtime also looks and has been said to be extremely strong for a wooden roller coaster. Another thing I should mention is the lighting package they have in the Jinan one. Now I can't confirm if it still works, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if it doesn't anymore because this is China we're talking about. But if this works, this is hands down the best lighting package I've ever seen on any roller coaster. You thought hang time was cool? Yeah, it's nothing compared to this. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if this is a top 5 night ride in the world just because of that lighting package. So all in all, awesome ride, but I think that there are a lot of other Chinese woodies that do what this Jungle Trailblazer does, and more. At number 8, we have maybe the toughest coaster to rank, Wooden Dragon at Jinan Sunac Land. Now, when I made the guide series last month, we knew very little about this ride as it's under construction, so I wasn't going to include it in this list. But the first POV has recently come out, so I'm deciding to throw it in. It's probably the toughest to rank because no one has ridden it yet, so I don't really have any opinions to go off of. First, I want to say that if you don't know anything about this coaster, it's kind of a cross between one of the Jungle Trailblazers and Oscar's Wacky Taxi, or really just any of the Gravity Group family woodies. It's only around 30 feet taller than Kentucky Flyer, but it has a much more varied layout with a number of turns as opposed to the usual out and back layout you find on those. Another unique thing about this coaster is that there are actually a few theming elements scattered throughout the ride, and that I can remember, I think this is the only Chinese Woody with any theming of any kind during the ride. It's not the fastest ride, just 46 miles an hour, but they made up for that by throwing in a ton of small back-to-back pops of airtime that look more like moments you'd find on one of GCI's coasters, although this is a gravity group. Overall, I can't wait to hear what riders have to say when this thing opens later this year, because I'm really curious how strong the airtime's going to be. At number 7, we have another pair of clone Jungle Trailblazers, Jungle Trailblazer at Phantom Wild Dreamland Jingzhou, which opened in 2015, and Jungle Trailblazer at Phantom Wild Asian Legend, which opened in 2018. These are some of the ones that don't feature a corkscrew. There's this one sequence of elements at the beginning of the ride that I think might actually be the best sequence of any of the coasters we're going to take a look at. You start with that drop that's going to provide some incredible airtime in the back of the train because you gain quite a bit of speed on the turnaround before it. Then you have a nice sustained moment of airtime, refreshing because most of the airtime in these coasters are more sharp than sustained. Then you're blasted with a jolt of laterals right before the real standout elements start. You have this wave turn sort of thing that you completely fly through. Gravity Group is calling this element a sidekick. Then you go straight into this 90-degree bank turnaround that is apparently much tighter than it looks and pummels you with positive G's. Then you hit another side flip, blasting you with more insane lateral airtime. After that, you have a layup packed to the rim with airtime and head choppers. This section doesn't quite live up to the first half, it seems, although maybe it would be impossible to do that. Just looking at the elements that these rides traverse, I really wish that I could rank this higher because they are indeed elite rides, but there have been a number of roughness complaints specifically on the Jingzhou version, so I'm keeping it at number 7. Moving on to number 6, we have 2 more Jungle Trailblazers to get through in this video. Yeah, I wish they could all be the same too, but we have Jungle Trailblazer Oriental Heritage Woohoo, which opened in 2015. This is one of the Trailblazers that has a corkscrew. The airtime on Woohoo Jungle Trailblazers is said to be some of the strongest that you can find on any wooden coaster. There's these 2 hills at the end that are really abnormally sharp and sorta resemble the Ejector Death Hill on Zip and Pippin, or the final hills on Magnum. You're said to get absolutely yeeted on these. Plus, a lot of these hills also combine that strong sustained ejector with laterals that you might not expect to find on a gravity group, because gravity group loves their banking. That's not to say that there aren't any high bank turns, however, because this Trailblazer has this one turn banked 90 degrees that, just like the turn we talked about on the previous Jungle Trailblazer, looks to have some incredible positive Gs. Now I feel like I'm kind of just saying the same thing for all these gravity groups because they all do stuff good like airtime, bank turns, and head choppers. That's why they're so hard to rank, but I think that Jungle Trailblazer Woohoo just does it a little bit better than the previous ones. Also, don't worry, we only have one more Jungle Trailblazer to get through after this. Ah yes, finally, our first GCI on the actual list. That's refreshing. At number 5, we have Jungle Dragon at Happy Valley Chongqing. And no, that's not me trying to make a dumb racist joke. The name of the place is literally Chongqing. The thing that really carries the layout of Jungle Dragon is its terrain. The whole ride is spent working down this hill, so that allows the ride to really never lose its speed, and thus this has some of the best pacing of any wooden roller coaster out there. That also allows for numerous double down and even triple down elements that are fan favorites of roller coaster enthusiasts. Overall, the airtime looks much stronger than on most GCI coasters because the airtime moments are a bit, I don't want to say larger because they aren't like these big camelbacks, but they're bigger than the little pops that you see in a lot of other GCIs. There are also a number of moments where the ride has to take a turnaround to get going back the other way, and the laterals on these just look crazy. They decide to hardly bank these turns at all, and I'm sure this must make the ride a pain to maintain, but it's nothing but beneficial to us, the riders. Jungle Dragon pretty much does everything that you could want a GCI to do perfectly. At number 4, we have a gravity group that is not named Jungle Trailblazer. Let's frickin' go, man. We have time travel from Hot Go Park Happy Jungle World. Wow, that's a mouthful. And the ride opened in 2015. You thought that Jungle Dragon used its terrain to its advantage? Oh well, that's nothing compared to what time travel does. You can see this almost immediately after the ride starts as you dive down under this pathway that's said to rival Phantom's Revenge in terms of drop near misses. Then as you continue around the layout, you dive down a ravine, and look how much speed you already have to start at the ride, and you never really lose that speed for more than a few seconds. Every time you do lose a bit of speed though, you find yourself diving down an airtime filled ravine. There's of course plenty of airtime to go around on the ride too, of course, as this is a gravity group roller coaster. But I don't want to just talk about the airtime for every coaster because then I'd just be saying the same thing. One element that I really want to talk about is this part where you start by taking a turn upwards where you have some great laterals. Then as you lose a bit of speed and the laterals might decrease, the train suddenly finds itself banked 90 degrees. Then you pull out into yet another ravine. I really just don't think it'd be possible to create a better element for this terrain, and watching this ride just helps you get a better understanding of how skilled the designers are over at Gravity Group. Now we're into the top 3, and 7 spots after the first one, we have the final jungle trailblazer of the video, Jungle Trailblazer Oriental Heritage Xiamen. Other than the fact that it doesn't have an inversion, take everything that the other jungle trailblazers do amazing, then dial it up to 100, and that's what you get with Xiamen Jungle Trailblazer. It has a great drop, sustained airtime, it has quick pops of airtime, it has a sidekick element, it's a decently long ride, great laterals, high bank turns, positive Gs, head choppers, incredible setting, and most of all, the pacing. This has, in terms of feet covered per second, statistically the best pacing of any gravity group coaster, not just in China but in the world. Yes, it has better pacing than Voyage, which puts me almost in disbelief because Voyage starts out with around 15 more miles per hour than Jungle Trailblazer. Also, I mentioned this briefly earlier, but the setting is easily the best of any gravity group in China. The architecture and the trees around the ride are incredible, and what's even more impressive is that this POV I'm showing came from 2017. So this was opening year. Most rides or areas opening year look a bit desert-ish because the plants haven't had time to grow in yet. Wildwood Grove. But Oriental Heritage just went for it opening year, which you gotta respect. It's just these little details that add on to the incredible layout to put Jungle Trailblazer at Oriental Heritage Xiamen this high on the list. Now into the top 2, maybe a bit predictable, but I have Python and Bamboo Forest at Nanjing Sunakland. Basically, Python and Bamboo Forest is Jungle Dragon, but a bit more fast-paced, especially in the second half, and with sharper laterals. I say this because Python and Bamboo Forest, which by the way is actually located inside of a bamboo forest, that's kinda cool. But what I was saying is that it's similar to Jungle Dragon because most of the ride is spent weaving back and forth down a hill, and the top speed isn't reached until midway through the ride. That top speed is 62.1 miles per hour. Oh, and fun fact, but Python actually holds the record for the world's tallest, fastest, and longest GCI. And those are 3 records that actually matter, unlike for example with Cedar Point and Valraven's 47 records or whatever it is, where one of them's the record for the tightest vest on a dive coaster. But back to Python, the first half is pretty great with good airtime, but I wouldn't put it as ultra elite or making the coaster worthy of number 2. What puts the coaster up here is the second half that starts with probably some of the strongest, most sustained laterals out there. Then if you love airtime moments, it's back to back to back to back to back, rapid fire bang 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 airtime while you're traveling at the coaster's max speed. As someone who loves airtime and rapid fire elements, Python looks exactly like my type of ride. And finally, at number 1, it's pretty obvious and there's a good chance you knew it was going to be here before the video started. We have Wood Coaster / Mountain Flyer at Night Valley. Mountain Flyer in my opinion is a perfect GCI because it has everything you could fathom having in a 2011 GCI. It has a pre-drop, an airtime filled regular drop, one of the best settings of any coaster, year-round operation, amazing pacing, sustained airtime, quick lateral airtime, crazy laterals, outer banked airtime, smooth ride experience, head choppers, airtime while going through head choppers, quick transitions, great speed, station fly-throughs, 2 of them to be exact, tunnels, and it's an extremely long ride. Other than maybe racing or theming, Mountain Flyer checks every single box for what was possible for a GCI to do before the introduction of Titan Track, and that makes it pretty close to a perfect ride for me. I mean, just look at what this coaster is doing in the second half. It speaks for itself. You can hardly comprehend what's happening, and that's why Mountain Flyer comes in at the number 1 spot. And with that, almost 2 months after releasing part 1 of the guide, we are done with the series of videos on Chinese wooden roller coasters. And to be quite frank, I'm not sure I want to think about these coasters for maybe a good year or so, just because I put so much time into researching them. But hey, it was really interesting and it's all for you guys. This was actually a really fun series to make, and that's what really counts. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like, and maybe even subscribe if you're feeling generous. Leave any suggestions, thoughts, or video ideas down in the comments below, and I'll catch you guys later. See ya.